Working harder to make more money is a myth because you don't get paid based off of how hard you work in the time frame that you worked in. You get paid based off of the value that you provide in that same time frame that you worked in. Now, for myself, this is a difficult concept and something that really took a lot for me to take in and really started breaking a few methodologies and ideologies that I had in my mindset, because I'm someone that, if you let me, I'm going to work 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. Again, if you let me. But then I started to understand, why is it that, let's say, someone in an organization that have both, let's say, been in the same company, or have both been or went to the same school and now work, let's say, with the same college certification or degree, why does that one person make $27,000 a year while the other person makes $30,000 a year? Now, obviously, if you have a college degree, it's going to be way more than that. But I just want to make an example of why is it that they work the same amount of days, they get the same holidays, they work maybe a cubicle or two apart from each other, they work in the same department. Same thing is true for an industry. If you are in the insurance industry, or if you are in the auto sales industry, or if maybe you're in the tech industry, why is it that someone is making $100,000 a month while the other person is barely scratching $100,000 a year? And so this concept right here, I really started to think about, and I wanted to share it with you. And I have my whiteboard because I wanted to kind of illustrate of how I was able to kind of break through that, and now how I'm able to earn more money now, let's say working less than what I was working the full year. Now, obviously, I still spend the entire year working on different things in my businesses, but I am also to the point where I guess you can say I'm taking the Tim Ferriss approach with the 4-hour work week, which is something that you want to start creating systems, or you want to start, at least if you don't have a business, start creating a perceived value in the type of job or in the type of career that you're involved in. Because the first point that I really want to introduce to you is being commoditized. You see, in this country, and what I can say for the most part around the world, at least from what I've seen, we tend to commoditize things, of whether it's something that deserves the value that's being asked, or it's maybe something that doesn't deserve the dollar amount that's attached to it. One of the easiest ways that I can explain this is, let's say you go to Amazon and you're looking at 2 items. Let's say both of them are this rag right here. Let's say that one rag is for $4.99 and the other rag is $2.99. Usually, if we're reading through the description, we'll say, okay, let's go ahead and go with the $2.99 rag because they seem to be the same thing. How does this work in the workplace, or how does this correlate over into business? It matches on the other side of the spectrum, because if, let's say, you're someone who went out and applied for a job and you told them that you graduated at XYZ school with an XYZ degree and XYZ studies, they've probably heard that 10, maybe 15 times. Now, that's not obviously putting down what you've done. Obviously, education is important. I'm a strong advocate of getting educated, whether that's at the college level or if you decide to do so on your own through, obviously, self-education. But understand that when you're introducing that into a workplace, or when you're introducing that to management, that may not necessarily land you a 6-figure job, or that may not necessarily get you a higher paying role. So the employer starts to think, okay, if I can go ahead and get this person at 40 hours a week at $27 an hour, they for the most part seem to offer the same thing. Why would I pay this person, let's say, 37 when I can pay this person 27? They'll be just as happy and they'll do just of a good job. Which, if you are in the space where you're commoditized, again, either for your time, doesn't matter how hard you work, or possibly for the type of product that you're trying to sell or you're trying to launch, you want to get into what's called a market of one. And this was a conversation that I had with a good friend of mine, who we were setting up a couple things in my business, from my funnels to my website. And he said something interesting. He said, Irv, for the most part, your case is a little bit different, because whenever you're introducing something, if I'm speaking, let's say, to somebody that doesn't have a social following, or someone that maybe doesn't put out as much content as you do, I have to kind of have the price conversation with them of how much they can charge. But in your case, it's a little bit different, because you can kind of play around with your pricing a little bit more, because you already have an audience. Now, I'm speaking from my experience. Obviously, this doesn't have to do with social media, so kind of trend with me here, right? Because this is going to impact you and your income. So he says, you are what's called a market of one, which is how I kind of came across and how I envisioned almost like this line right here. Now, you have to excuse me. Look, dude, I have an iPad, right? I have an iPad, and for some reason, I guess I'm old school, I just like writing on stuff. I can do it with my iPad, but anywho. So with this line of continuum right here, let's say that this is your starting point, and let's say that there's either a cap on your business, let's say industry, of how much you can actually make for that product, because for the most part, certain industries, there's going to be a certain cap that you can have, right? Or let's say if you know that with your job, no one in that position makes more, in your area makes more than, let's say, X amount dollars an hour. Let's say that that's $100,000 a year. So let's say that if all of us are here, right? You go into the workplace and you say, I graduated from XYZ school, I have XYZ credentials, and all the resumes look the same, then that initial cap on this continuum is, let's say, going to be $50,000. And I hope you can see that. That's $50,000, right? So what do we have to do in order for us to kind of break through that and get into the next phase of earning more and still working the same amount of hours? Because again, you can be making $50,000 a year working 40 hours a week, or you can make $100,000 a year working 40 hours a week, or you can make $1 million a year working 40 hours a week. Again, the time doesn't change. It's the value of that continuum that we're explaining right now, of what changes, of, again, being in that market of one. So let's say if I wanted to take a 10% jump on this, right? I wouldn't necessarily have to work more hours as much as I would have to find a way to introduce, or let's bump it up to 20%, as much as I would have to introduce more value in that time that I'm working. So let's say a 20% bump on this is 10 grand, which now brings us to $60,000 a year. Working at $60,000 a year, and again, working the same 40 hours, having the same vacation days, or working out of the same brick and mortar, selling these same products. How are you able to do that? And that's through creating a market of one. A few different ideas of how you can create a market of one is with either your value proposition, if again you have a business, of what differentiates you. Because one thing that I learned from a mentor of mine years ago in sales is, Irv, you can either be a little bit better or you can be the same, but you're always going to get stuck on negotiating how much your time is worth and how much the person willing to hire you for, let's say, consulting or selling real estate, or the management, how much they're willing to pay you based off of, again, you being a little bit better. The only way to break out of that is you have to be completely different. That stuck with me. If there was anything else that I needed to take from that conversation and that I wanted to introduce to you, is you can either be a little bit better and still get stuck in negotiating on price, or you can be completely different and be in a market of one. So how do you create that being in a market of one and not getting stuck and having to negotiate? How do you add a little bit of more teeth to the conversation when you're speaking with management or when you're speaking to a client? Apart from what's on paper, what do you introduce off the grid? What do you introduce off the paper? Apart from the credentials, apart from what's on the resume, apart from you having an Excel spreadsheet, apart from you having the certifications, what other values do you bring to the table? How are you able to actually connect with the prospect? How are you able to connect with the management team in a different way that they feel, okay, this person is completely different from every other candidate that we have in here, and because of that, let's go ahead and bump up and give them that increase that they're looking for. And by the way, this works for you as well. If you're already in, let's say, an organization or in a company and you're trying to, let's say, get that raise, and you're thinking, how can I actually bump up myself to, instead of now getting paid 50, how can I get myself to 60, 65, 70? So it all depends off of the perceived value that you bring into your marketplace and into the conversation, again, with the people that are looking to either hire you, help promote you, or that you're looking to scale with. Because once you learn this right here, you don't have to add more hours to your workday. You just have to increase that what we call the illusion of what your time is worth. So there you have it. That's a simple lesson, but I did want to give it to you just because I know it's going to help out so many people. If you found value in this content, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. Join the official community. Don't forget that anytime I'm not posting on here, I'm posting over on the Inside with Irv show. So if you like what we have going on over here, you'll love what we have going on over there. Once again, I appreciate you checking me out today. Till next time, everyone, I will see you in the next video.